In this video, we'll be dissecting the muscles of the abdomen. So before we begin, let me kind of orient yourself with the location of the head and the tail. So this area up here, this is the head. The area down here is where the tail would be, just so you kind of have an idea of where the orientation is on the cat. So there are four abdominal muscles, and they sit upon one another and they're in different directions. So again, just like in the muscles, you want to look for the change in striation patterns in order to find the abdominal muscles. So the first abdominal muscle is going to be the outermost abdominal muscle. And you can see that the striation patterns run this way and they run this way on this side, kind of like a V pointing down towards the groin area. And those are what we call the external oblique. Oblique means at an angle. So you have the external obliques, and then there will be other muscles that we're going to talk about here as we begin to dissect them. So the easiest way to get to the external oblique is if you pull up on this tough fibrous connective tissue. This sheath actually connects the external oblique to the midline of the abdominals, which we call the linea alba. Okay, so we're going to start picking at this connective tissue, and we're going to slowly lift it up and see if we can get a hole and then create pockets. So there are different ways to get to the external oblique, right? You can do it by the area closest to the groin. So you can see if I pull up, it lifts off of the underlying muscle. You can do that, which is where I think I'll start. So I'm gonna lift, poke a little hole, right? Be careful, because these muscles are really paper thin, so you have to be super careful. So I'm actually gonna use my scissors to kind of push down while I'm pulling up, kind of the push-pull method that we've been using for some of the dissection. So once I have a pocket, again, I'm just going to lift and cut, and I'm going to make my cut in this direction towards the xiphoid process of the sternum. Again, all I want to do is create pockets. Now, once I get my finger in here, once it's large enough for me to get my finger in here, then it's easier for me to create a bigger pocket. But for now, I'm just going to carefully use the tip of the scissor while pulling up with the forceps. I'm going to push down on the underlying abdominal muscle, being careful not to be overly aggressive. You cannot be aggressive with the abdominal. They are really paper thin. So I have a pocket. I'm going to cut, and I'm just going to keep making a pocket. Push, pull, pocket. Okay, so now more push pull, more push pull, more push pull. Hopefully you can see that. Just more push pull, right? It's okay to take a sneak peek on the inside to see, make sure that you're not doing anything or to the underlying abdominal muscles. Again, just more connective tissue, right? A little more separation, and there you go, right? You have the external oblique. So again, the striations run in this direction towards the groin. So when you reflect the external oblique, you'll get to the underlying abdominal muscles. Now, remember how I started down here picking at this connective tissue? Well, you're actually going to take your cut and you're going to make a cut curved towards the back, kind of like this one I'm showing you here, if you can see that. And the reason why is it gives you a better, you can reflect the muscle more easily if you cut it towards the back. All right, so there is the external oblique, there's the external oblique reflected. All right, so now, always try to spread your abdominals out. It makes it easier to work with, and then when it's all bunched up like this. So I'm gonna try to spread it out. Spray your cat periodically, often, right? So you can see things. All right, so I have to get to the other muscle. So the next muscle that I'm going to look for lies directly underneath the external oblique, and that's called the internal oblique. And again, I'm going to look for the change in striation patterns. The internal oblique will run at a different angle, an angle towards the xiphoid process. So I know it might be difficult to see, but I'm going to try showing you anyway. But here's the internal oblique, and the striations actually run in this direction. All right, so I have some connective tissue that I'm going to carefully remove. This is surface connective tissue. Again, be super careful when pulling this off. It is paper thin, and you can mistakenly pull off connective tissue off of abdomen, and that could be bad, you know. But it happens. I mean, I may mess up here in the video because I'm doing one take, so. It happens, it happens. That's why you have two sides of your cat. One to dissect, and hopefully you dissect it right the first time, and if you don't, you have the other side. Now the reason why I'm trying to dissect or remove all this connective tissue is because the tendon sheath that attaches the internal oblique to the linea alba is going to cover the next abdominal muscle, which we call the transversus abdominis. So I'm going to try to do that. This cat has, looks like a bruise of some sort, so we'll see. I may already be in the abdomen, or I may be close to getting into the abdomen, so we have to just be careful. So I'm going to spend a little time removing some of this connective tissue, and as soon as I'm done, I'll show you how to dissect out or separate the internal oblique. So I've removed the connective tissue that was sitting on top of the internal oblique, and basically what I was trying to do by doing that is show you, here's the tendon sheath that connects the internal oblique to the linea alba, and what you want to do is you want to carefully again get your forceps underneath, create a pocket, and then you want to cut along that line. And basically what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be pulling off this tendon sheath off the muscle that sits underneath it, which is the transversus abdominis, which I will show you how to do here in a second. But when you pick at this connective tissue border here, you're in essence separating the internal oblique from the next muscle, which is underneath this tendon sheath, and that's called the transversus abdominis. Transversus abdominis will have striations running in a different pattern. Trans means across, so the direction of the fibrils will run across the abdomen. So again, create a little pocket, do a little separation maybe with your scissors just to get an initial hole, right? Lift, 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 right? A little bit of snip, right? Cut, 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 right? Until you can get some of your forceps underneath. And then this is where you really have to be careful, right? Push down and lift up, push down, lift up, push down, lift up, push down, lift up, and you will have your abdominal muscles. Now, if I were you, not if I were you, this is what you need to do, is once you have separated this tendon sheath from the transversus abdominis, go ahead and cut this tendon sheath off. That way you can see the transversus abdominis. So I'm gonna do that, right? And you can see when I lift this tendon sheath, there's a muscle right here. This is the last muscle of the abdomen that we have to dissect, okay? So I'm gonna take my scissors. I can see where the boundary is between the connective tissue and the muscle. So I'm simply going to cut this connective tissue off of the muscle, or at the boundary or border of the last muscle that I have to dissect. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut up to here. All right. So when I spread, you can kind of see, again, they're paper thin, so you can even see my muscle. I've already torn the transverse abdominis, because here's the abdomen, right? The muscles of the abdomen, or the viscera of the abdomen. But here, right, I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully you can see it. You can see the striations of this transverse abdominis run in this direction. If you follow this white line, that just shows you the striations, right? So you have the external oblique, you have the internal oblique, you have the transverse abdominis, and then finally you have this muscle here, right? So this muscle is the muscle, the six-pack muscle, the eight-pack muscle, and this is called the rectus abdominis. So for the rectus abdominis, we are going to, again, separate the connective tissue off of that muscle. Now this one's a harder muscle as well, because the connective tissue tendon sheath just sits right on top. So what you have to do is kind of hold the muscle down and just get your forceps underneath, and basically you're going to go back and forth, removing the connective tissue or lifting the connective tissue off the muscle. And once you do that, then you're going to go ahead and separate as much of the rectus abdominal as you can. Okay, so the rectus abdominal muscles, right? The striations run in this direction. They run from the xiphoid process to the groin, right? So again, I'm going to attempt to get under this connective tissue right here. So you can see it's a lot harder. All right, it's easier said than done. So I'm just trying to find an in. Where can I get in to separate? There you go. So here I'm underneath the connective tissue. Once I get there, I'm gonna get my forceps, and I'm just basically gonna go back and forth. See? Back and forth. And this one's a tedious process. So you're going to be working with small segments at a time, and don't worry. It's just this is a harder muscle. This is why I save the muscle, the abdominals, for last, because this is the most challenging of the dissection. So you can see when I lift, right, the connective tissue comes off of the muscle. So it's really important that you have a gentle touch when removing connective tissue, right? So here. Right, get my forceps underneath the connective tissue, and then just simply work it forward carefully, right, and then just kind of go back and forth, just lifting the muscle, right. I'm pulling towards the connective tissue and never down to the muscle, right. So I lift carefully, right, I'm slowly working, all right. And once I have enough, go ahead and cut. And you just repeat the process, right? Get your forceps underneath the connective tissue, right? Get a little pocket, right? Hold the abdomen down, go back and forth, just lifting only on the connective tissue, not pulling too aggressively, because you don't want to cut the muscle, right? Back and forth, right? So this is one of those processes where if you're impatient, you're going to tear your muscle, you're going to rip your muscle, and it's hard. Now if you're really good, you lift, right? You lift, and then you just take your scalpel, the edge of your scalpel blade, and you go towards cut towards the connective tissue, and this is how you separate. And this one goes really fast if you do it this way. So this is, again, a different technique, but a more effective technique because it goes by faster. So you can see, I'm just removing the connective tissue off the muscle, and it's happening really quickly. So you would repeat this process, and you need at least 2 inches of rectus abdominis. I'm not going to have you dissect the whole entire thing because that's just going to take too long, and for your purposes, for our purposes, you just need to see it. So I don't know if you can tell, you can kind of follow the line, right? Let me fix this up a little bit. If you can see, right, here's the rectus abdominis, right? And here you can see the striation runs in this direction here. So you need about 2 inches worth of 2 by 2, right? 2 by 2 section of your rectus abdominis, and then your dissection will be complete. It'll be finished. So for this end here, right, again, I'm gonna lift, take my scalpel, cut towards the connective tissue. You can see it just comes off pretty good. This is for sure where you wanna ask me for a fresh scalpel blade, because this will make your process go a lot faster. So I'm gonna stop here because you guys get the idea, and I'm just gonna recap the abdominal muscles. Okay, so initially you start with no muscles being exposed, and all you see is the outer abdominal muscles and its tendon sheath that attaches to a line that runs right down the middle called the linea alba. This muscle is called the external oblique. When you dissect and then reflect the external oblique, directly underneath the external oblique, right, on the lateral side of the cat, is the internal oblique. Under the tendon sheath of the external oblique, right, is a muscle, right, that runs in this direction. It's called the transversus abdominis. And then next to the transversus abdominis, you have, that sits on top, the rectus abdominis. So again, you have the external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, and the rectus abdominis. And that concludes the dissection of the abdominal muscles.